how do you feel about diet in the awakening process and as a spiritual tool?
I feel so strongly about diet, it's kind of ridiculous. I try not to impose my ideas about diet on people because many people are not ready for the ultimate steps when it comes to nourishing their body in ways that are in accordance with their source self. So I tend to work people into it more slowly. But in my own life, I am an absolute Nazi when it comes to what I put in my body. And that's not done from a space of resistance. I realize I used the word Nazi, but it is because when you raise your frequency to a certain degree, you are no longer compatible with lower vibrational things. Mm-hmm. And so you're much more likely, if you try to introduce that, because they're incompatible, if you have a high vibration and you try to introduce something with a much lower vibration like a junk food, you will get violently ill because it's not a vibrational match, which is why I often joke I'm the hardest person to feed. Yeah.
What kinds of foods, because there is a big difference between food that has life and food that is literally death. When I go into a major box store to buy food or, to get some vegetables, I notice that my perception of it is that 95% of it is dead. There's no life force in it.
Yes.
The meats that are arranged there and the canned foods and even the vegetables, they look like they just came off out of a funeral fire.
And most of them did. We abuse our foods. We don't understand that we are an extension of those very things we are putting inside of our bodies, so we don't treat them with any kind of respect. And It sounds kind of odd to the people in the general demographic to treat your red pepper or green pepper with respect, but it is an extension of you. And so if we raise our vegetables and fruits in abusive situations, poisoning them, and raising them with no kind of love, but just producing them in mono farming for mass production, and basically it has an eighth or more, or less, basically, an eighth or less of the energetic force that it would have if you just let it grow naturally, if we had any kind of care for it. So there's much more going into our food. See, this is important that people understand. There's much more going into your food than just the pesticides. It's also the attitude of everyone that interacts with that food. So if there's a farmer from Mexico who's come up here to support his family, who's interacting with these vegetables and is miserable and is treated with poor conditions, then his vibration's going into the food. If we have decided to raise our vegetables in a mono-farming environment, meaning it's the only crop for miles and miles and miles, then it has no exposure to anything other than the same vibration that's around, which is not how things naturally grow. And the insect life around it is going to be less healthy by virtue of the fact that we're mono-farming. And so we're literally just killing it. We're killing it before it gets here.
Well, it is a complex topic, and I'm just starting to read the book called The Thin-Torn Garden, and there are probably many people who read that decades ago, which has to do with communicating with the divas, spirits, and elementals, and communicating with the soil, the spirit of the soil. And there's that Russian series, The Ringing Cedars, I think. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a beautiful series about, I think her name is Anastasia, and she puts the seed in her mouth, and the saliva imbues the seed with your DNA, and it's done in a certain way. It's just quite lovely. And I think that's a matter of raising our awareness. And clearly you live that awareness.
Oh, yes. And I have my moments where I get quite frustrated with it, I assure you. It's not like I'm always in alignment relative to it. 2 months ago, I was laying in the bottom of my shower crying because I was in somebody else's house and realized that there was not a product that I could reach in the house that did not involve some kind of suffering. All of the foods were tested on animals, and I started to go down, instead of keeping my vibration up about that, I went right down the rabbit hole and started panicking about the fact that we live in a society where it is difficult. You have to go out of your way to find things that are not created.
Right. Right. It's really, life is a full-time job, just living.
Isn't that the case?